All right. What's happening? Oh, it should be me. Speaker. Gallery. So that's Lindsey. She'll be with us in a minute. Welcome to another edition of the Friday Forecast. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I'm joined by my pack members in the background here. You know, I love wolves. I love me some wolves. It felt like a wolf day because I feel like Lindsey is part of the wolf pack, and we're gonna sink our teeth into some of the meatier topics of our time and boldly go where few shows dare to go. So welcome to another Friday Forecast. We'll bring Lindsey on in just a moment. But before we do, I need to spend a little time with our sponsor, and you know who that is. That's True Hemp Science, my good friend, Christopher Lynch, who is providing a wonderful product and service to this community. And I can't tell you how much of a blessing Chris has been when it's come to not just assisting people with their CBD needs. That's easy. I'm not saying anybody could do it, but there are a lot of other companies out there that you can spend your money on and get CBD. The thing that sets Chris apart is the fact that his CBD is incredibly high quality. And he's always tinkering and trying his best to improve the delivery of the product. And when I mean delivery, I'm not talking about, it going from his place to your place. Delivery as it getting into your body and what it does inside of your body. So there's that component. And there's also the fact that his service is impeccable, absolutely impeccable. That means that if you have a question or you're unsure about what kind of CBD would be best for you, you can pick up the phone and you could call him and he'll talk to you. And he'll do a great knowledge share and download. And that in and of itself is a very healing act. To be able to talk to a human on a phone and get some advice or some insight into what you're experiencing and what might be the best path to do that starts you on your healing path, right? To have that connection, to not have anybody judge you about whatever it is that you're going through. Because a lot of times in our life, unfortunately, we wind up getting judged for our ailments, sickness, inflammation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you spend $100, you will get free product. Chris will throw it in. And if you spend $150, you get free shipping. If you're listening to this on the podcast, just go to truehempscience.com/ref/23. That's truehempscience.com/ref/23. When you check out, use the code 15MINS, and that ensures that you're going to get all the goodies that are coming to you for supporting Chris and his business, which supports our community as well. All right. Speaking of our community, let's bring on my fellow wolf packer here, or wolf unpacker, Lindsey Scharmyn of Rogueways.
Hello, Robert.
Hi, Lindsey, officially.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you back.
Wolves are actually my people. You're absolutely right.
See, I knew this. I had an intuitive sense here that you and I were like this with the lupine.
Yes.
You ever run into any wolves out there in Colorado?
I haven't actually, but I've had, encounters with the canine in the wild many times. Too many times. In fact, one time, I'm pretty sure this was a coyote fox hybrid. Like it had to be. I have a video of it somewhere. But he popped out while I was hiking and he just started playing on the trail up ahead of us. And I was like, what an amazingly cute thing to come across in the wild. Then he noticed we were there and he got kind of shy and he just kind of watched us for a second. And then once he realized we weren't, going to attack him or be mean or anything, he just started playing with us like a dog. Like he like ran up and did that whole thing where he was like bouncing back and forth. And I was like, this is a wild dog, like a wild fox, or coyote. It just was fluffier than a coyote, which is why I think it was a hybrid with a fox. It just didn't look the same, but so cute, so wild, and so rare. It was one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me.
It's really cool when nature spontaneously interacts with you like that.
Especially in that playful way and like knowing you're there.
Way. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I think I don't know if this is the case now, because children now are very different. But when I was growing up, I would fantasize about having like unique experiences in nature with wild animals.
Yeah.
Like that was maybe it was the flipper programming, right? Or whatever. But I thought to myself, that's the ultimate. If you could go into nature and have a authentic and playful or connected interaction with a wild animal, like that's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So, well, welcome to the show. And we don't have you for very long. So let's get into some of the meaty topics. One of the first things I wanted to start off with, and by the way, Chataria, welcome to our festivities. And I need to add a hammer to somebody. So give me 1 second. Let me see if she's in here. She might be in here on Sunday night, but I need to put a hammer on Mishi. And I can't really find her. We'll do it on Sunday night, or I'll figure out how to do it. Anyway, we got a lot of really interesting developments. We're getting ready to have our own private Discord channel. So I'm really looking forward to that. So you and I were talking, well, we weren't really talking, we were texting on Twitter. And you were telling me that you were really sick and you're just getting over being sick. And one of the things I've had this discussion with other people. It seems like, and you're a Sagittarius, it seems like the month before we have our solar return, people tend to get sick.
Yeah. And I had never heard that idea until you said it. But once you said it, I was thinking in the last few years, I've gotten sick every November. And I'm wondering if I always have. I can't remember. I just know for sure the last handful of years at least.
Yeah. And so you and I talked a little bit about that. And astrologically speaking, it's the end of the astrological year, right? So you've accumulated 11 years worth, 11 months worth of emotional, psychological, physical, and spiritual toxins, right? And so in order to have the solar return, like that stuff needs to go, right? It needs to be expunged so you can have kind of a fresh slate and a fresh start. So if you have any feedback on that, leave some comments in the comment section if you've experienced that. But you're feeling better now, and I think that's important.
Way better. Oh, thank God. It was really, really rough. It was really dark too. Like I went to some dark places this time, which is not always the case. But when I get sick, I get the added bonus of I have a severe autoimmune disorder, and I'm in a late stage of it. And so I have this insane flare up that happens at the same time.
Right.
So yeah, if anyone's ever experienced norovirus, which I had never had, I don't know how I've made it 40 years and never experienced norovirus, but I just hadn't. But now I have, and I've experienced it with autoimmune flare up. So this is brutal. Just
so
brutal.
You got the daily double on that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I really feel like some people may have gone to the hospital, and I was like, I mean, what are they going to do for me? I'm just going to suffer through this. So
there are two things that I think are happening simultaneously in our post-COVID, whatever COVID was world, right? The first thing is that we had this mass formation psychosis, and everybody has a different relationship with it. And we've witnessed like the casualty list, the body count just start to really stack right? And often in very dramatic ways when people who would be like news reporters just drop on camera, right? So this whole idea, bringing this into the astrological discussion with the South Node in Scorpio, it heightens the value of mortality, right? So now and I had about 2 weeks ago, I thought I was going to fucking die.
Wow.
And it's like, I don't really go there, right? Like when I mean, I've gotten sick, but this was one of those moments where I was about 10 seconds away from calling 911. So there's something in the air now,
Yeah.
right? When we get off or we get sick, it feels like, whether it's frequencies or the frequency of people that are leaving the planet, like that amplitude is getting turned up now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's really weird. I honestly was like sitting there begging to die. And then I would be like, no, wait, what am I thinking or saying? Like, I don't actually want to die, but it was like very present in my mind and in my body. And I wonder, if it's almost like this sort of call of like, hey, anyone who wants to die, like now's the time, let's do it.
Right.
Come on.
Like the Grim Reaper has taken control of the internet, right? So yeah. But I think there's something there. I think there's something about people, and even there's this guy who's been homeless in Canada, and now Canada has medically assisted suicide, and because he's been homeless for so long, he just wants to die. Right? This is in the air right now, and I think there's a positive side to it and a negative side.
Yeah.
The positive side is if we all face death, we would have nothing to fear.
Yeah.
And none of these entities, whether they're in this world or the next, could hold anything over us. Right.
We wouldn't be able to be manipulated. We wouldn't be able to be mass formation psychosis because we would be like, I mean, what? I might die. Who cares? I've understood this. I've moved on. Like it's just a part of life. And yeah, this is one of my main arguments right at the beginning. Because I was like, look, what's the worst thing that can happen? You could die. Well, for sure that's going to happen someday. So let's just get over that now. Like, let's do the best we can. And I mean, I don't know how to, because we've removed from our society everything that would have helped us to do that naturally. We used to have, for example, the bodies of our extended family members who lived with us, if not in our house, somewhere nearby. And we would see the bodies when they died. From a young age, we would have been seeing bodies and we would have understood and we would have watched it then go into the ground. And this would be part of the process of understanding, oh, I will also one day be that and do that. And people will behave in this similar way when I do that. And we've removed all of this. And so I think that's part of why it's able to be such a fear for people and people so detached from it. The other thing I keep noticing is that when you're talking about, this is just in the air and this body count is stacking up and people seem weirdly okay with it. Like I keep hearing people describe like, yeah, now so-and-so's dead too, and it's been this person, this person, and this person. They're all young and it's all sudden and they're just dead now. And like it's not alarming to them. It's not disturbing to them. And I keep thinking, well, if the previous thing scared you to death and you were so scared of death, but like this isn't scaring you at all. It's a very weird switcheroo.
It's one of those weird paradoxes of the so-called human experience, and I don't have any explanation for it.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's like just really displacement, psychological.
It's a weird psychological displacement.
Yeah,
like this whole thing and fear and death and caring for people around you, so you're not a messenger of the plague, right? But then once all the receipts start coming in, it's like, well, they were old, or oh yeah, I had a bad diet, or oh, it's like there's this weird rationalization and justification for why these things are happening. I think it really does speak to just how neurotic, borderline schizophrenic we are as a collective, right? Not as individuals or small groups, but they've done a really good job at fractalizing people.
Yeah.
So that's why it's been, I think, such a weird phenomenon. You and I were going to talk about a few other things here today while I've got you on. And you're fearless, which is what I love about you.
Thank you.
And we're going to go into fearless territory here. And we're gonna kind of start this off with Kanye and Kyrie and the dust storm that they've kicked up. And one of the things that I've been watching, give me just 1 second. Let me find this thing. One of the things I've been watching is how the ADL has used Kyrie and mostly Kanye as a cash cow. Like now the ADL is raking in more money than they were prior to all of this. And this is a very interesting development here. I wanted to show right here. I just found this. This is from November 10th. And the website is called ejewishphilanthropy.com. Okay. Who knew that there would be a website, ejewishphilanthropy.com? So here you have this guy. Boy, he looks real happy, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's like, yep, they're sending me out here.
Again.
I got to bring you the check. So Adidas and the ADL embark on a 4-year, 7-figure partnership in wake of Kanye controversy. The partnership will entail a new anti-bigotry curriculum for student athletes. Okay.
Oh
So now they're using this as a wedge moment to get into colleges and make sure you don't get another Kyrie Irving popping off, right? And will enable the ADL to more widely disseminate its educational efforts. So what does that all mean? Well, they're going to get $1 million. Just weeks after Anti-Defamation League CEO Jonathan Greenblatt accused Adidas of an appalling lack of action against Kanye West's anti-Semitism, the sportswear giants donated more than $1 million to the Jewish organization and embarking on a partnership to educate athletes against bigotry. Okay. Do you think they'll educate them so that they're not bigoted, let's say, whites towards blacks or blacks towards whites? I don't know about that. I think that their bigotry may have a very specific focus. Greenblatt hinted at the partnership in a speech this morning at the group's day-long Never Is Now. That's their new thing. Never is now.
What does that even mean?
Well, Never Is Now is it's a hybrid of never again, right? And
Okay.
never again is the post
Yeah.
internment camp statement, right?
Right.
The post Holocaust tag, never
Okay.
again. So never is now. So what they're doing is they're resurrecting the never again, but they're bringing it into the present.
Well, isn't it amazing that you can't compare anything to the Holocaust, or else you're racist, you're bigoted, you're anti-Semitic, but they can compare almost nothing. Nothing happened, in real terms, nothing happened, but they're comparing it and saying never is now. They're saying now is the Holocaust again.
That's right. Yeah.
How is this? Yeah, just hypocrites.
So, like I said, this guy looks like he's real happy to be there. Look at him.
Like, man, my soul is full of joy.
It's like, okay, all right, this is what my 6-figure salary is requiring me to do. So not only that, but see if I can find this. Elon Musk, what do you think of Elon Musk?
I think he is an absolutely horrifying shell of a human used to. Oh, can you not hear me?
My volume. What do you think of Elon Musk?
I just think he's a horrible person who's been used and is a shell of a person who gets used to pull off globalist, technocratic, transhumanist, eugenicist movements.
I agree.
But he plays a real good game. And so I fell for it. I used to be in love with him. I used to say I wanted to marry Elon Musk and he's so amazing. And, when I was 30 or so, because of PayPal and how, freeing it was for the world, and all these poor people across the world could send this money to each other finally without the banks holding them back. And it felt very powerful to me. And it took me a long time for people to help me open my eyes to who he actually is, where he's actually from, his family's history, that he's definitely one of them, quote unquote. And, that this is all serving a larger agenda to get everybody to be doing sort of cashless digital transactions, which we're doing. It worked, right? And now, he's moved on to other things. Tesla also has its purpose to get us all using cars that can be shut down remotely. And everybody's headed that way. And then, now we get to see him doing this SpaceX stuff, which is its own weird, interesting mix of magic and sorcery and garbage. And then now the Twitter thing, which I really, really believe is like a slow demolition of this public forum. They're just going to be able to blame it on him and how, I don't know, he mismanaged it and hate came out. Or the other option is, if they're not just destroying it completely so that it's no longer functional, that they're going to make it this opportunity to implement, what are they calling it? It's basically digital ID, but that you have to prove who you are so that there's no bots, which sounds really good. And I would love if there were no bots. But if in order to do that, we have to give up our privacy and our ability to, which we didn't really have, but it's just the idea that every interaction you have online is going to be tied to your identity in an official capacity, because how do they verify who you are? They use your government issued ID. So, he may be implementing that, being used to implement that, make it more popular and more likely that it's on every platform. Once it's on Twitter, something huge, something that many people use. So he's just often used to steamroll in these things that sound good. He seems like a savior, and then they're actually serving this larger globalist technocratic nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then we get into the whole dance between privacy and anonymity, right? And there's no real privacy on the internet. There is some degree of anonymity, but trust me, if people wanted to find out who you were, it wouldn't take too long.
No.
Right? So you could have burner accounts, and people get outed on their burner accounts all the time. So yeah, Musk is that guy, right? He's like a Pied Piper. He's like a Pied Piper character, who plays a little flute, and you'll follow him right into the side of the mountain, never to be seen again. Yeah. And I think it's been a very conscious cultivation of his image in this regard. And I go back to the Iron Man movie, right? Where he's in the Iron Man movie. And so
he is.
Oh yeah. I think it's Iron Man
forgot.
one or two. It was either the first or the second one. And of course, Tony Stark is the Elon Musk of the movie, right?
Yeah,
he was
bad boy.
Tony Stark was Elon Musk before Elon Musk was even born, right?
Yes.
He was an inventor, and really he was involved with munitions and the creation of weapons for the United States government. And he took some shrapnel in his heart, right? So then he had to create this device which metallically, took the pressure off the shrapnel around his heart, and that's where he got his Iron Man powers.
Yeah.
So they brand him, right? They cast him in Iron Man, like with the, sort of the comic book doppelganger of Elon Musk in some ways.
That's funny. Yeah.
So they've been creating this role for him. And ultimately, my theory is that he's there to displace Bill Gates at some point, right? Because Bill Gates will age out, and there's a bunch of young,
likable anymore.
He's not likable. Young people are not Bill Gates people, but they're Elon Musk people, for the most part. So, he's the new version of Bill. He's the tech guy that is cool and innovative, and sees solutions of curing humanity's ills through technology and science.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I either forgot or didn't know that, but it's interesting because when that movie first came out, I think I was still in love with Elon Musk. So I probably was like, yeah, this is awesome.
So is that back when you were a lefty, when you were in love with Elon Musk?
I was definitely still lefty. Yeah. definitely. So I wasn't communist anymore, but I was very left. If I was going to do anything, it was going to be on the left side of things.
So you're actually moving to the right of the far left. So you were kind of maybe a little progressive by that point, right?
I don't know what you would call it, because I was an anarchist for sure. I just but for example, when Bernie popped up, I was like super pro Bernie, because I was like, hey, maybe this guy's actually for real. Maybe we can actually like do something with this corrupt, horrifying system that otherwise nothing can be done with. And
Right.
so that I like campaigned for Bernie, and then that wasn't that many years ago. I just look back at myself and I'm like, wow, I really was like stuck in this despite all that I saw through. Just so interesting. It's interesting to look at like the layers and layers and layers and layers of traps they sort of have built, and these characters they have along the way that draw you in and get you to believe and get you to add your energy to the momentum. And that even when you see so much, you can still not see so much.
Yeah. I mean, if I was a Bernie person when the Nevada caucus came around, I I I, I would have flipped out.
I knew it
And
though, because I already
yeah,
knew the Clintons are so corrupt. And I was like, there's no way they're going to let this guy through. There's no way. If he's even remotely real, they're not going to let it happen. And there it was.
yeah. So now we're in a post 2016 election shocker world where the entire electoral process just seems like a scam and a sham. And I think this is a really terrible sign for the country, actually.
Yeah, it's very sad. The further sort of right I've seen and moved, you might call it that. I'm still an anarchist, but when we're talking about just surface politics and governmental and maybe even just fiscal and the old school sort of republicanism, like small government, libertarian sort of stuff, I much more understand those points of view now. And one of the things that I've developed with being able to see that side more clearly and understand why you might value some of that stuff is this love of our country. I never have had that my whole life. I was raised to hate this country and to hate the government and distrust all of it. And, that was literally part of my upbringing. And so I didn't stand for the flag salute or any of this stuff. And I see the sort of like brainwashing of that tradition of like standing and saluting something and all of this. But I also see like the beauty in the Constitution, what it was meant to be, and the beauty in the actual system if it was operating how it was meant to. As a republic, a constitutional republic is a beautiful thing. And it's a novel thing. It's a unique thing.
Yeah,
And it
right.
hasn't existed before. And it was doing pretty well, I would say. But these very powerful interests definitely can't let that exist, because it is not controllable easily. You have to work very, very hard to subvert it and control it. And that's what they've had to do for this long. And now we're losing that. And not only are we losing it, but that faith you're talking about in this system, this idea that it could have ever even been good, it doesn't exist, right? The people just like me were raised now to automatically hate it and see that it was nothing
Right.
but durable, and to get rid of it, demolish it, and abandon it. And so there's very little hope for keeping it in that atmosphere.
What's really interesting about this country, its inception, founding fathers documents, and we all know they were flawed, and they had strange and weird alliances, but their collaborative efforts to create these documents were unheard of, right?
Mm.
And if somehow the country was able to, and some people think that the crown was always in control no matter what, right? Like this was just a 3-card Monty and a bait and switch. If that was true, then why was there the War of 1812, right? If that was really true, then there could be some truth to it, maybe as it relates to Washington, D.C., as this separate entity, like the City of London or Vatican City, things like
Right.
that. But if we're just playing like Philip K. Dick timeline stuff. If we had gone down that path and managed to really marshal and manage those documents in a way that was like your life depended on it, right? Or our life blood depended on it. This is a model that could have been transferable to any other country in the world.
Yeah.
And that never really happened, right? I mean, if you look at the franchise model in the 20th century, it is not a constitutional republic based on some form of capitalism. It is socialism and communism that gets the McDonald's treatment in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Why is that? Like, think about that for a second. Here we have this thing, and everybody wants to come here.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to have an equal shot, equal opportunity to either be a criminal, or a stand-up citizen or whatever, right? And yet, that's not the model that is being promoted and adopted by the rest of the world.
Yeah. This is another indication of just how powerful and far-seeing some of these forces are, right?
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we're playing the long game here. So in the long game, like, what do we really need to do? And we always need to have these like polarized options for people so that when they see like how much they don't like this one, they swing to this one, and they never even look at the other options that are out there. It's just these two. Let's keep them in this false dichotomy. And it's either communism or capitalism. We won't even talk about constitutional republic. In fact, do you know anybody who knows that we live in a constitutional republic?
I live in like constitutional republic, shit kicker, come and take it country. So yes, I do.
So true. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I guess in the rest of the country, it's very uncommon to find anyone who even knows what that means or that that's what we are. Right. They'll say what?
Yeah.
What will they say that we are? A democracy.
A democracy. Right. Yeah.
Never been a democracy. Not a democracy now. Probably moving towards it. Maybe. I don't know.
And some people would say, well, that's a good thing, isn't it?
that we
Are
go
moving towards
towards
a
it. Yeah.
We need more of a democracy.
And I'm like, I don't know, go into a room with two rapists alone and see if you like democracy. I don't.
That's a quote. That's got to be one of those memes that you can
put it on a shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's wild. But you're right. It's the long play. And now is the way things have unfolded really since 9/11, 2001. Like, who would want this model now, right? It's like, oh yeah, well, we've seen what you've done in Syria, and we've seen what you did in Libya. We see what you did in Afghanistan and Iraq. Stay away. We don't want your capitalism. So they've literally just tainted the whole thing so that people are looking in the other direction. They're looking at BRICS now, and BRICS is gaining momentum.
Yeah.
But it's also another system, right? And who started that system?
Yeah. Well, look who just came out promoting it, Klaus Schwab, right? He was like, oh, this is the way of the future, is to have these, I forget what he called it, but BRICS, right? These alignments and allegiances of capital and trade and whatever, rather than the individual nations. And it's very 1984-esque, where we're moving towards like blocks and groups and regions instead of the nation state. And so it's just it's like one of the links between, in the evolution from where we're at to globalist utopia, which is our dystopia.
Right, exactly. Their utopia is like, yeah, we get to do whatever the fuck we want. And meanwhile, you guys are under lock and key.
Yeah.
And if you say the right things and do the right things, you'll get your cricket money every month.
Your scraps. Yeah. I just saw this thing yesterday that was like listing proteins that, you're allowed to have on a certain diet. And it was like this protein, that protein, animal meat and whatever, and cricket powder. And I was like, oh God, are we there now where it's like listed as an option for proteins in diets that you can find online? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. So getting back to Musk here, one of the things that's happening is that Twitter is losing advertiser money. And as a result of that, Elon has had to take the knee here. But that's not uncommon. Musk personally led call with civil rights groups to address hate speech on Twitter. 7 civil rights and policy groups were on the call with the tech billionaire who handled the meeting solo. So it was just him and these heavy hitters, including the ADL.
And including some of the people who worked with the government to censor political and social ideas during, the last 4 years or so.
Right.
Those are the people who he met with too, like some of the exact same people. So people thought this was going to be a big change. He's going to free everything. No. If he's already working with those people, this is not going to be anything but more of the same, just in a different flavor, different coat of paint.
So Free Press, well, that's an interesting name. Anti-Defamation League, the Asian American Foundation, Color of Change, the George W. Bush Presidential Center, the NAACP, the former CEO of LULAC, a nonprofit representing Hispanic communities. Now, I have heard, in fact, I actually had it pulled up somewhere, but I'd heard that Elon is actually going to turn a lot of the moderation on Twitter over to the ADL.
Can you imagine though? I mean, this was the thing when Kanye said whatever he said, and people were saying, well, this is anti-Semitic. And I'm saying, where's the anti-Semitic statement here? And no one can actually point out anything about it and say what is anti-Semitic about it. All they can say is that, he's saying something about Jewish people. Well, I mean, we could say a lot of things about Jewish people. Like Jewish people have a tradition of, blank. Is that anti-Semitic? No, it's not anti-Semitic to describe a group. Okay.
Yeah.
And to describe Jewish people at all. And then they can maybe say like, oh, well, the conspiracy theory he's alluding to has been shown to be anti-Semitic and it's been debunked. And you're like, okay, well, what about this conspiracy theory is anti-Semitic? Because when you look at what he said, it's actually just describing reality. He's just saying there are a bunch of people who are very powerful and or rich or both, who are in control of a lot of different industries and a lot of different organizations within different industries. And if you say or do the wrong thing and they don't like it, then they're going to cancel you. And they so happen to be Jewish. And then people freaked out. And then what happened? A bunch of Jewish people canceled him.
That's right.
So what was anti-Semitic about that, right? And he didn't say anything hateful about it. He didn't say, therefore, kill them, therefore, burn them, therefore, they're the worst, therefore, they're evil. Nothing like that. He just described the reality, but you can't apparently do that. And the average person, again, if you ask them, what did Kanye do that was racist or horrible? They won't know, and they'll go looking and they'll try to find the tweet or the evidence and they'll give up and they'll say, oh, but it's still just like, it's not okay because of what happened in the past. And it doesn't matter that none of that makes any sense.
With Lex Fridman, right? He went into it with Lex Fridman and he said, we got to be in the now.
Yeah.
We have to be in the now.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we got to remember the past, because we don't remember the past, history will repeat itself, right? That's the trope. And so what have we been doing for literally the last 16 years, right? We've been force fed to remember the evils of slavery, right? I mean, that has been on the front burner ever since Obama went into office. Yeah. So we're living that past again and again and again. And how inspiring is that to either group, theoretically, that was involved in slavery? It's not inspiring at all. Yeah. One group is being incredibly victimized, and then the other group plays the role of the victimizer. And so it automatically creates an antagonistic relationship between the two groups. And over time, right, things changed, right? We got into the 70s, and when we got into the 70s, post a lot of the turbulence of the 60s. And by the way, let's be clear, there were states and cities in America, but they were patently racist. Okay. Like there was an event when the AFL, which is the American Football League, they were going to hold their All-Star game in New Orleans, and they got to New Orleans, and the black players in the AFL, there were more black players in the AFL than the NFL. the black players in the AFL found out they had to go use a separate hotel, right? And this is in the 60s. And they're like, fuck this.
Yeah.
And and their all-star teammates who weren't black were like, we're not playing. If we're not staying, we're not playing. Right. So they just left, and then they went to, I think they went to Dallas or Houston and had the game, and it was fine. So there were some very deep divisions in this country at that time. And as a result of a lot of turbulence and activity, like some things got sorted out, right? Like if you're black, you should be able to fucking go to the University of Alabama. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's just ridiculous. Did it take Kennedy to send the troops in there to get it to happen? Well, apparently, because that was the only thing that George Wallace would listen to. Right. Oh, by the way, how come Trump didn't send any troops into America during the summer of 2020? That's another question for another time.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then we get to the 70s, and things are kind of working themselves out a little bit. It's like things are starting to meld in a very interesting way. Musically, you have groups like Sly and the Family Stone, which are totally biracial, funk and soul and rock, and Tower of Power, and we're starting to mesh our worlds together, right? And I grew up, I don't know what your situation was like, but in the 70s, I grew up in San Jose, California, which was really diverse. So I grew up with a lot of Mexican kids. I grew up with a lot of black kids. I grew up with a lot of Japanese kids. And then eventually sort of the next wave of immigrants came in. And then, we started to hang out with Filipino kids. We started to hang out with Middle Eastern kids. We started to hang out with Korean kids, and everybody just fucking hung out, right?
Yeah.
We just hung out. And so we had reached this point where it wasn't that big of a deal. And then all of a sudden, after Obama comes in, well, we've got to resurrect the ghosts of the Civil War and slavery. And it's been that way since then, right?
And young people right now, they wouldn't believe what you just said. They would not believe you, because their idea is that we've been in just pure hatred since, the hundreds of years ago, and that there was never a time where like the races all got along, and that what you just described is impossible. And they just wouldn't believe it. I didn't. I grew up in a very, very white suburb, not suburb even, I'm sorry, rural area. And so we had like a few people of any kind of ethnicity or color. And it didn't matter. We were still all friends, nobody cared, but we just had very few. It was very white. One of my best friends, though, was the Jewish kid in our grade for a while, and I didn't know or care about any of it. And I don't think anyone else did either. When I turned 18 and I went to, however, our local theater, which is like, a tiny little theater that shows movies 3 months after they come out. And it was a Friday night, and this is like the big thing everybody goes and does in our town, because it's very small, and no one was there. And I was asking the owner when we were buying the tickets, I was like, was something else going on? Is there like a play going on somewhere? Because there's, again, very little to do. This is the only thing to do. And he said, oh no, this always happens when we play a black movie. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, people are very racist here. I was like, I had no idea. I don't think any of the kids I grew up with who were, of any sort of variety had any idea either, though, because the young people weren't racist, but the older people apparently were, which is very interesting, And so I went and saw Ali in an almost empty theater, completely unaware that I lived in this place that apparently was very racist. But again, the youth weren't. At the very least, but now it's like reversed. Now the youth think that like everybody always has been, including like us and our generation. I'm like, no one that I know in my generation was racist. We may have had those things that are sort of like unconscious racism that you just didn't analyze and don't know, right?
Yeah, blind spots. Everybody has blind spots, right?
Right. Yeah. Even some of it positive, like, oh, black people dance well. Like, well, that's fucked up. So, you don't, that's not even true. And it's just not like there's a reason for the trope for sure. Like, right, yeah. But it's not like something that assume or say and apply to a group. And you just analyze those things as you get older and you realize, your blind spots and you go through them. But we've turned that into like, oh, everyone has this internalized hatred racism. And it's like, no, we may have these sort of like internalized assumptions or things we didn't realize were just like not really okay, or that we just didn't know. We're ignorant. That's what a lot of racism ends up being, is just ignorance, right? And then you educate yourself through it and you get past it. It's not hatred. I don't know anyone who's hateful. And I know they exist. Like you said, like, there was this not that long ago, places where Black people couldn't even get a hotel room. And I know there's people out there who would like tie up a noose and make it a hate symbol or whatever. Those people are pretty freaking rare. Like there's not a lot of them.
I would agree. I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And, where I live here in Texas, just by the demographic of the population, I hang out with a lot of white people, and I'm privy to a lot of conversation, and I don't hear very much racist talk going on. Like, God damn it, I hope them Neds don't come in here to this hill country.
Yeah. Like, but that's what people think is happening. I'm a teacher by trade, and for years I was a teacher, and not that long ago I left teaching. But so right before that, maybe about 5 years ago, I was in the classroom still with seniors, juniors, older students. And one of my students and her group of friends came in between classes or something. I don't remember exactly what. And she was just saying like, Miss Brown, do you realize there's just like Nazis everywhere? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Are there Nazis at the school right now? Like, she was like, no, like, there's just like Nazis in the cities. Like if you go down to Seattle right now, there's just Nazis like walking around on the streets. And I'm like, what are you saying? Have you seen them yourself? And she's like, well, no, but I mean, they're on the news. And I'm like, so the news showed you footage of people dressed like as Nazis, like acting like Nazis and saying hateful things about Jewish people? And she's like, well, no, but, they're just like saying that there's a lot of people who are like acting like Nazis lately. And I'm like, I don't even know where this is coming from. I don't watch the news, but apparently whatever these young people were watching or getting from their, atmosphere was telling them that the world is overrun by Nazis, and they just believe it. And then they're just reporting it to others as though it's fact. So again, that sort of caricature that you just acted out, they think that that's real, and they think that it's common, and they think that it's ubiquitous. And that has just been crafted for them and dropped in, and it's just what they believe now. And I'm not saying every young person is that ignorant or whatever, but this is, what was happening at the time. And I just helped them walk through sort of like, okay, I mean, if you're not seeing it anywhere, you have no evidence, and maybe it's not what's happening, right? But geez, like, I don't know. I can't imagine being a young person right now and being just bombarded with this absolute lies, and having to sort of walk through that and try and figure out what's going on and what's not going on, and believing that the whole world is racist and has been just awful and evilly hateful for your whole life. And, that you're going to be the one who changes it.
Right. Well, that's part of the operation, right? That's part of the psychological operation. And so you're familiar with James Lindsey, right?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, wow. You got to get into James Lindsey. So James Lindsey is, I think, the world's foremost expert on people like Antonio Gramsci and Paulo Freire, social, emotional learning. I mean, this guy breaks this shit down 6 ways to Sunday, and is able to essentially re-articulate it back so that people understand like the depth of these ideas and how they have really infiltrated our lives, right? Yeah. In the educational space.
Yeah.
Big time, right? Especially with Paulo Freire, whose famous book is called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Yeah.
So this is a big theme, right? And the theme is that if you create in the person's mind a racist milieu, then there has to be somebody who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed. And in that system, you have to identify with the oppressed.
And you have to fight. You have to become the activist too.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And the activism part is part of your redemption.
Yeah.
But you have to identify with the oppressed, because identifying with the oppressed will absolve you of your sins. And so this is a whole religious trip.
Yeah.
And then the idea of activism is very much along the lines of going out and trying to get people to what do you call it? Be reborn, right? To be reborn into this new ideology, this new system. And he gets into this so minutely that Freire, who's also into liberation theology, brings these two together, right? He brings the spiritual and the religious component into the political and the Marxist component, which makes it really, really potent.
Yeah.
And he even uses language like the individual must go through their own personal Easter in which they die to themselves and the system that they were indoctrinated into, and their embrace of the oppressed is going to be the thing that will be their salvation and redeem them. This is how deep this goes, right?
And that's exactly describing this trans ideology that is being pushed on the youth also. It's both things, right? It's this racial divide, it's this trans thing, it's the Nazi thing, it's all of it. That SEL, the social emotional learning, was big right as I was leaving, the handful of years before I left teaching. This was something that was being forced into our curriculum. We had to do it. We literally had to set aside a day each week and go into social emotional learning. And it's all very interesting, brainwashing sort of stuff. But what we're describing here really reminds me again of 1984, right? Because what are these people replacing? I shouldn't even say replacing with it's like the unseen aspect that isn't questioned and is just pushed in, and therefore it becomes foundational and unquestioned, is that the state is the mechanism by which you also therefore solve all the problems, right? And so you're automatically just inculcated with state worship. In 1984, right, you had all of your emotional, all of your psychological, and all of your spiritual even energy was removed from you and was channeled into the state, right? And we see this in so many ways in that book, and you're describing it again through this social emotional learning and Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed. All of these people who are inculcated into this are just assuming, right? Well, we have to get the state to do something about it. We have to get them to fix this, right? We have to be the activist. Well, what is an activist without the state, right? An activist is someone who is activating in order to, make the state do something about whatever their perceived issue is. There is no other way. You can also see that whole being removed from the spiritual and the emotional and the psychological embedded in this too. And especially again, the trans thing is the perfect example of all of the stuff that we're talking about, right? The dying to yourself and being reborn literally as a new identity. Often it started with separating you from parental authority, right? And saying, oh, your parents don't love you, right? They don't understand you. So just reject them and just come over here with me, and you'll be safe in the little trans closet over here with me, and you can tell me your pronouns and stuff, so you've already started to separate all of these things. And now your new God and your new religion is this movement, this ideology. But again, I haven't met anyone who's very loud and proud on the trans right side of things who isn't asking the government to take care of things for them. Right. So we're just seeing that whole replacement of everything sort of natural and beautiful within us and replacing it with the state.
Sorry, I'm having issues with my volume here.
Sorry, I think also.
Give me 1 sec.
It says I have a strong connection, but I also sometimes just get messed with a lot.
I've got a new computer I'm bringing online. I was trying to use for today's show, but I needed to upgrade the OS. The whole trans thing is, it's like one step beyond, because number one, what percentage of the population are we talking about here?
It's literally like 0.05. Well, that was the percentage before the last handful of years. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 1 or 2 now percent. Like it's grown a lot. Still
Right.
very small.
And theoretically, like the Black population is what, 12%?
Yeah, something between
Right.
12.
12% seems to be much more reasonable amount to give a shit.
To focus on.
If there's a trans person out there who watches the show, God bless you.
Yeah, neither of us care about whether or not someone's trans or not. It's beautiful. Who cares? I just the social, political aspects are different.
The emphasis of the issue based on the number is way out of balance.
Wildly disproportionate. Yeah.
Yeah. Way out of balance.
You would think, especially if you look at like commercials or movies, or that almost everyone is gay or trans.
Yeah. Well, they've really made a very interesting and rapid transformation of marketing through commercials and media. And so I watch a fair amount of YouTube, and I'll get YouTube channels that will pop old commercials up. And so I can see sort of the history of commercials and who's in them and what they're doing. Right. And I was actually very surprised going back and looking at like the 1960s and 70s and 80s, that there were commercials that were way more biracial than I remember. Like if it was a Saturday morning cartoon cereal commercial, the kids in the cereal funhouse were mixed, right? You have a couple of, maybe you'd have a young black girl, young black kid, and then some young white kids. They were all together in the funhouse eating fucking Fruit Loops or whatever, right? And so I look at that, I'm like, wow, okay. So what is the genesis behind this? Do they want to sell more product to a wider array of people? Are they being just kind of naturally, responsibly more inclusive? Like, what's the story? What's the narrative behind this? Because there's a certain part in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you just see this, right? There's no like, they'll go like an 80s commercial, they'll go to Applebee's. And you look around at Applebee's, it's not all white.
Yeah.
Right. There's like other people. Oh, look at that. There were other people in the 80s. Right. And then when you get into the 90s, things begin to really change. Like the late 90s and the early 2000s, I begin to see this trend where the white male looks like a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
An idiot. And even like the State Farm commercial, where the guy is so freaked out in the middle of the night, he's got to call his State Farm buddy, right? I mean, that guy looks fucking weak, right?
Yeah.
He looks, who'd want to be married to that weak little cocksucker, right?
Yeah.
And his wife gets up and, who are you talking to? I'm talking from, what's his name? From State Farm, and it's like, he's got this bromance going on with this guy, but it's the State Farm guy who's the guy that's steady and stable and able, right? That's just one example. Well, eventually the State Farm guy in the future is no longer white, right? Like this is starting to happen in the 90s, the late 90s. The white American male just gets totally cucked out. I remember witnessing it, watching it on these commercials. I'm like, there was this one commercial. I forget what, I'd love to be able to just dial it up on YouTube. I'll try to replay it in my head. And it was a white couple and a black couple. And I think it might have been a commercial that had to do with photography or a camera or something, right? And the white couple were separated, and the guy was down below on this cliff, sort of near this kind of ocean scape. And he was all tussled and sweaty and, and just a mess, right? And his wife is kvetching at him. Meanwhile, the black couple next to them, they're cool, they're calm, they got their whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, this is an interesting transition commercial, They're basically saying this group is divided, right? She's on top of him because she's the one looking down on him.
Yeah.
He's a sweaty mess. And then we have this other couple over here, man, they got their shit together, right? And it's like, so now that was a big transitional point. And, good luck finding a representative white male in any commercial now. Just good luck. It's not there. Right. So literally, like that movie with Stalin, have you ever seen that movie with Stalin where basically they're like, it's one of these Russian movies and it's a post-Stalin movie and they literally dissolve him out of the movie. You see it in this movie. It's like, okay, we're moving on.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, what the fuck?
Just signal.
Right. This guy killed like 5 million people. Oh yeah, we're just gonna
let that go now.
We're gonna fade him out now. Right. So then I began to see this other trend. And that was like within the last 3 to 4 years. I don't watch a lot of commercials. And for the most part, the portrayal of the Black American family is more like the portrayal of the old white American family on commercials. Fine. I don't have a problem with that. Right. I support the portrayal. It's a great portrayal. But I have been watching the Black fathers in those commercials start to become cucky, just like, and there was this one commercial.
Interesting.
There was this one commercial, and it was, I think it was a tire commercial, and the husband was in the car, he was driving, his family was with him, and the way the commercial portrayed him was like they were running his shit, right? And all he wanted to do was check out. That's all he wanted to do, was wanted to check out. And I'm like, man, they're portraying this guy as being fucking weak, right? He may be in the driver's seat, but he's not really in the driver's seat. And then I watched them re-edit that commercial, and they clipped his speech and stuff, and they actually made him more edgy. It was like, it was weird.
Yeah.
It was like they got like, hey, look,
nobody likes this.
Don't make the black guy look too dumb and white here, okay? Give him some of that militant edge.
Yeah.
And it was just weird. Anyway, but that's happening more and more now, right? And it reflects, I think, what's going on in trans world. It's kind of like, okay, we're kind of over the BLM, righted everybody's wrongs. So we're on to the new thing, right? We're on to the new church of Baphomet, which is really what this is all about.
Yeah. Erasing gender altogether.
Yeah.
Like, you are nothing, actually. You have no identity. So let that go now. This is actually part of what I loved about that Italian prime minister, female, I forget her name right now, but her speech that was so, and she's a young global leader or whatever. So I'm not saying that she's just this amazing soul, but
Georgina Maloney.
Yes, her. And so she had her little speech that went viral. And that's part of what was so beautiful about it, was she was like, look, they're trying to take away this and this and this aspects of our identity. She's like, why is it wrong for me to say that I am a woman, that I'm a mother, that I'm a, whatever. And we should all be able to do these things and have these aspects of who we are and what we are, and have them mean something and have them be respected. And it's interesting because we can say that safely if we're talking about being Jewish, or if we're talking about being Black, or if we're talking about being trans. But if we're talking about being white, no, we can't say that safely, especially if we're talking about being white men and being proud of that and being like, this is who I am. And I love that about me. And yeah, I'm a proud white man. Like, now you're in dangerous territory.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Oh,
but why can't we?
You're a Nazi. You're KKK.
You're a Nazi.
You're a racist. You're a fascist, right?
And people will defend this. So, good, well-meaning people will defend this. They'll say, well, look at the history of what that means, of white pride and whatever. And I'm like, no, look at just what the person means. What does the person mean when they're saying, I am proud to be a white male? Are they saying I hate all other races? No, they're not. So don't put that on them. Don't project that onto them, right? If there was a history of white nationalism in this sort of neo-Nazi sort of movement, and that still exists, I'm sure, in little pockets of ignorance around the country. But they also had their organization, they had their symbols, right? And you could identify that. They had shaved heads, perhaps, certain laces in their boots, right? And things that they would say, like, yes, I hate people who aren't white. That is very different from just being proud of who you are and what you are in your cultural heritage, right? Why can't I be proud of the Norse side of myself that is very white? I am very proud of that, right? I should be. That's part of who I am. That's part of my tradition. I love lefse. Like, everyone needs to get over it. It's crazy to think that, to be excited about who you are and to proclaim who you are should only be reserved for the few people we've decided are still, so oppressed. I'm like, who's not oppressed? Who have you met that's not oppressed? Who have you met that's not under the boot of the system that wants us dead? No one. So, like, don't pretend that you get to be oppressed and no one else does.
That's a great point. So you can't have oppression without the so-called oppressor, right? That is the big thing here,
Yeah.
right? So they strip out the boogeyman, right? And then through the contrast between the oppressed group and the boogeyman, now they have their eternal war and their fight for change, right? Which is never ending. So it looks like you got to go. You got another show to do, and you got to get on out of here.
I do.
Well,
It's so fun to talk with you, though. I'm so glad that I got to come on today, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll have to do it again. And it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you.
I wish we had another hour, but so you're going to be doing a show with Sophia Smallstrom. Is that who you're going to do a show with?
Yeah, I'm about to record with Sophia Smallstorm. I normally, only release on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. I usually do live shows actually at 7 p.m. Mountain, but I always pre-record with Sophia because that's what she prefers. And since I was so sick this past week, I didn't release or do any shows actually. So I'm just going to release this one either tonight or tomorrow as a sort of bonus episode. Cool. And then I'm still going to, continue on with my live schedule on Sunday and beyond. So it is kind of a bonus, and it's exciting. And I always love talking with Sophia and yourself. You're both some of my favorite people. So.
Well, likewise. So where can people find you? And you, not only do you do podcasts, but you also have services that you make available to people. So can they find that all at Rogueways?
Yeah, rogueways.org is the best place to find all of it. I have my books that I write there. I've channeled a few of those through with some really powerful and profound knowledge within them. If you buy them from me rather than Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or other major retailers, then I write a little inscription to you. And so that is a nice little touch. I do orgone. If people know what orgone is or not, they can go check that out in my shop. I do have an event coming up on December 18th or 19th. It'll tell you on the actual event page there. The tickets are available in the shop. It's called One Day of Brightness. And that is an all-day event. Robert, of course, was at our last One Day of Brightness. I think it was the last one we did.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Very, very cool day. People enjoy that a lot. So if you're interested in coming, we've got Joshua Lewis. He's a physical medium, clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient. So he'll be presenting and helping us do our own mediumship. And then we've also got Marty Leeds, who's going to be there. He's a Gnostic leader and teacher. He's a math magician, and he's just an awesome thinker and philosopher. So he's going to be presenting new content there as well. And it's going to be a pretty awesome day. So if people want to go to that. And then I do work one-on-one with people. I have spiritual services. I do tarot readings and other things. So if people want to do that, that's also on the site, and it's all at rogueways.org.
Right on. All right, Lindsey. Have a great interview with Sophia, and hope to see you again in here in the next few months. And I'm always available for your show as well.
Awesome. Yes, I love when I get to have you on Rogueways. It's always a fun time. So I'm sure we'll be in connection.
All right. You take care.
All right. Thanks.
The great Lindsey from Rogueways. Here we go. All right. So we have I think we have a little bit of time left. And because I usually go for 2 hours with a guest, and I knew that Lindsey would have to leave early today. So I wanted to go over some content that I've been wanting to go over for a few days now, and I haven't really had the opportunity. So I'm going to take probably about the next half an hour to go down a rabbit hole that I think is really important and vastly underreported. Like, it is so important that the scale of which it's getting attention is just, it borders on criminal. So what I'm talking about and who I'm talking about is a person by the name of Charles Lieber. And when COVID broke, I think I was one of the first people, to be honest with you, to talk about Charles Lieber. And we actually began to look a little bit into his patent history. More importantly, what we did is we looked at his relationship with China and with Wuhan. And Charles Lieber, give you a little visual here. There he is. Here's his bio. Born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, attended Franklin and Marshall College for his undergrad, graduated with honors in chemistry after doctoral studies at Stanford University and postdoctoral research at Caltech. He moved to the East Coast in 1987 to assume the position of assistant professor at Columbia University. Here, Lieber embarked upon a new research program addressing the synthesis and properties of low-dimensional materials. He moved to Harvard University in 1991 and now holds a joint appointment in the Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology. So he's the head of both departments. As the Joshua and Beth Friedman University professor in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences at Harvard, Lieber has pioneered the synthesis of a broad range of nanoscale materials. The characterization of the unique physical properties of these materials and the development of methods of hierarchical assembly of nanoscale wires, together with the demonstration of applications of these materials in nanoelectronics, nanocomputing, biological and chemical sensing, neurobiology, and nanophotonics. So Charles Lieber has all these awards, right? He's highly credentialed. He's highly celebrated. He's written 340 papers in peer-reviewed journals, and he has more than 35 patents. Now, Charles, it doesn't say anything about his relationship with Wuhan, but he was arrested. Charles Lieber was arrested. He went to trial. He was found guilty. I don't know whatever happened to him. Seems to me like he's still circulating around academia. But here's what, oh, my camera flipped. Why did my camera flip? Oh, that's better. Did I even have that on the whole time? That's a better angle. It brings the wolves a little bit closer. Oh, anyway, Lieber had a very cozy relationship with the Chinese, and he was one of the people responsible for building the level 4 lab in Wuhan. Yeah, he was the guy. He was paid a monthly stipend by the Chinese. He was making something like $185,000 a month. That's apart from his salary at Harvard and any other endowment money he was getting. Like, that's $185 a month, not a year, a month. He also got a living stipend from the Chinese, and he helped build the level 4 lab in Wuhan. That's on the record. Now, when we get into the dissemination of materials, and in a lot of ways, I think like what Fauci was doing and what the NIH was doing, right, in their gain of function research, I think that's a bit of a cover. I think it's a bit of a cover. Do I think it was going on? Yes, I do. But I think that there was something else going on that was taking place that not only became, in some ways, part of the pandemic, but in other ways, part of the solution to the pandemic. So yeah, there's a whole sort of track, right? A trail where you can trace the gain of function material and how Lieber's got some of his fingerprints on it. You've got North Carolina, Fort Detrick. You have the research facility in Alberta, Canada, where you have essentially the two Chinese nationals who are kicked out of there and leave with important material, right? So yeah, I mean, there's this trail of material leaving the United States and ultimately in Canada, North America, and ultimately winding up in Wuhan. But is that really the story? I think the story goes deeper. And I think this is a story about the infusion of nanotechnology into the human body. Now, I know there's the Internet of Bodies and what's her name from Philadelphia and Allison, what's her name? Yeah, I get all that. So I know people are excited and she does really good research, although she blocked me on Twitter because I dared disagree with her about something. But I think that the gain of function stuff and the Wuhan virus is for the most part a cover. I'm going to show you why. We're going to get into Charles Lieber's patents. And I'm not going to spend the next 2 hours going through them, but I'm going to give you enough background here to show you what he's up to and who he's up to it with. So if we go to the end here, let's go back to the 5th page, which is the final page. Oh, come on back. Oh, there's even more. Look at that. I thought there was. Oh, yeah, I think this is it. Is it 7 it? Yeah, this is it. So Charles Lieber is filing his first patents for nanotechnology in 1991. Now, this is a basic fundamental method, right? A method of making superconducting fullerene composition by reacting a fullerene with an alloy containing alkali metal. So the abstract, a method for making superconducting fullerene composition, includes a fullerene with an alloy and particularly a C.sub-60 with a binary alloy, including an alkali metal, or tertiary alloy, including 2 alkali metals in the vapor phase. Also cesium-doped fullerene high, T-sub-C, superconducting. So he's on the way here, right? He's in the laboratory and he's essentially creating the materials that he'll be able to miniaturize into nanotechnology. This is the base, right? And what's also interesting is if you look at the date of the patent, that's March 23rd. What is March 23rd? That's the first day of Aries. That is the birth of the astrological new year, depending on the year, right? But we're right there, 01. 01 Aries. It is the birth of something. It is the inception of something, right? This is like Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. March 23rd, 1993. This is the Genesis soup for nanotechnology. That's what he's doing here. Because he knows he wants to go into miniaturization. He knows he wants to go into micronization, but he needs the materials and the elements that are able to become submicroscopic, flexible, strong, and be able to do things like what? Self-replicate. So this is the very first one. And I'm not going to go through every single one of his patents to show you how this thing progresses and gets us to where theoretically he is now, right? But let's go to page 5 since it's popped up here. Okay, so so this is page 5, right? Just want to make sure I'm at page 5. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at this. This takes us, he files his patent in July 16th of 2002. It takes 5 years for that patent to get cleared. But it is nanoscale wires and related devices. You'll see a number of patents that are related to nanoscale. The present invention relates generally to sub-microelectronic circuitry, and more particularly to nanometer scale articles, including nanoscale wires, which can be selectively doped at various locations, at various levels. In some cases, the articles may be single crystals. The nanoscale wires can be doped, for example, differently along their length or radially, either in term of identity of dopant, concentration of dopant, or both. This may be used to provide both N-type and P-type conductivity. So I guess N-type would be negative type and P-type would be positive type. So they're talking about charge, right? In a single item or in different items in close proximity to each other, such as in a crossbar array. The fabrication and growth of such articles is described in the arrangement of such articles to fabricate electronic, optoelectronic, or spintronic devices and components. So when he says here, the arrangement of such articles to fabricate, right, the fabrication or growth, he's not talking about a newspaper article. He's talking about the articulation of the nano arrays that come together. Okay, so look at it now. Remember, we saw that first one back in the 90s. Here we are, 2007. Let's see who's part of the patent list. The lead inventor is Charles M. Lieber. And then you got a bunch of names there, with the exception of David Smith and Mark Guideskin and Lincoln Lahan, who for the most part are either Chinese or Korean. I'm not even going to take a shot at some of these. Zhangfeng Duan, Yu Kui, Yu Huang, Jinfeng Wang, Hong Kong Park. Park tends to be Korean, right? King Yingwei, Wen Zhejiang, Deli Wang, Zhaju Zhang. You'll see a number of these names show up again and again and again. So not only is he building more complex components, he's got a more complex patent team. Now, do you think all these guys are there with him at Harvard? Maybe some are. Maybe some are in Wuhan, but they're part of the team, right? So when this thing gets theoretically sold and put into the market, the people who own the patents get a piece of that, right? It's like writing a song. And if the song gets played, you get a piece of the song, you get a piece of that. It's called a mechanical. Let's go through a few more of these. So some of them are going to be very similar, right? With some variations. Like this one talks about chemical vapor deposition can also be used to form nanotubes in arrays in the presence of directing electrical fields, optionally in combination with self-assembled monolayer patterns. Bistable devices are described. So they're working on, it's still nanoscopic wire devices and arrays, but what he's doing is with each patent, he's constellating an improvement, an add-on, a new level of research and development. So he's building the perfect beast, right? Remember, it started off with the soup. He needed the soup. That was the first patent. It was the techno-mortal soup of the new creation. And here he's playing Dr. Frankenstein and tweaking. Then he gets into nanosensors. And this patent was filed on October 17th, 2006, and then it's approved on June 10th, 2008. So this gets into electrical devices comprised of nanowires are described along with methods of their manufacture and use. The nanowires can be nanotubes and nanowires. The surface of the nanowires may be selectively functionalized. Nanodetector devices are described. So we're starting to get very, very complicated here. Very complicated. Nanowire heterostructures. Again, look at the inventors. Looks like Wei Lu and Zhang are the lead inventors here. Charles at the back of the train. More nanosensors, right? A lot of these patents are improving on a previous patent or making sure that if somebody else does something else with like the idea that they've already done it, they've already adapted it, they've already made a change. So now we're getting into apparatus, method, and computer program product providing radial addressing of nanowires. Now we're looking at how computers interface with nanotechnology. Notice he's got a different group of developers here, none of which are probably Chinese nationals. Eric Racklin, John Savage, Charles Lieber, Andre DeHaan, those are all probably computer guys, right? Nanostructure containing metal semiconductor parts. So now he's blending things together. The semiconductor compounds and nanostructures. So here they're like, okay, well, let's figure out how we can create a mainframe so that we can control a network. And over here, it's like, all right, well, let's use some of the same components that are in computers, i.e. a semiconductor, and we use the compounds, which are crystalline in semiconductors, and we'll put them in nanostructures, which makes it then easier for them to basically hook up to the mainframe. And here we go, Internet of Bodies. So this just keeps going and going and growing and growing, right? Array-based architecture for molecular electronics. Crazy stuff here. Nanoscale wire-based data storage. So they're actually talking about how the nano-based wires would have the functionality to store data inside them, not just transmit, but to store data. That's complex processing. It took them 4 years to get that one approved. Wow, that's crazy. This is just crazy stuff. And you can just see each one is sort of building on the previous one. Nanobioelectronics. Again, we got another kind of group of developers here: Fernando Patulski, Brian Timko, Gui Huey Yu, and Charles Lieber. The present invention generally relates to nanobioelectronics, and in some cases, bio is the body, people. In some cases, to circuits comprising nanoelectronics, such as nanotubes and/or nanowires, and biological components such as neurons. In one aspect, cells, such as neurons, are positioned in electrical communication with one or more of the nanoscale wires. So it's about your body talking to their new pal, the nanowire. The nanoscale wires may be used to stimulate cells and or determine an electrical condition of the cells. More than one nanoscale wire may be positioned in electrical communication with the cell, for example, in distinct regions of the cell. However, the nanoscale may be positioned in such a way that they are relatively close together. For example, spaced apart by no more than 200 nanometers. The nanoscale wires may be disposed on a substrate, for example, between electrodes, and the cells may be adhered to the substrate, for example, using cell adhesion factors such as polylysine. So they're also into using compounds here, compounds for delivery. Polyethylene glycol, there's a compound of delivery, right? Man, this thing just goes on and on and on. Okay, but there's one invention or patent that I really want to bring to your attention. And to me, this is the smoking gun. This is the smoking gun. Let's see if I can find it here. Nanoscale wire probes for the brain and other applications. Jesus. Scaffolds comprising nanoelectric components for cells, tissues, and other application. This is not the smoking gun. This is crazy shit. Three-dimensional networks comprising nanoelectronics. So you'll be able to get a three-dimensional view of what's going on inside the body with this shit, right? All right, what's what I'm looking for? Just look at all these things. Controlled synthesis of monolithically integrated graphene structure. So now we're starting to talk about graphene. This is not the smoking gun I'm thinking of, but it's a big one. In a method for fabricating graphene structure, there is formed on a fabrication substrate a pattern of plurality of distinct graphene catalyst materials. In one graphene synthesis step, different numbers of graphene layers are formed on the catalyst materials in the form pattern. Where have we heard about graphene? So this patent comes out in 2015. Takes them 4 years. Right. I got to find the smoking gun patent. Oh, this is the one that really sells this deal. Let me see. Here it is right here. That's it. That's it, right? And look at the date on that, November 15th, 2018. And look at how fast this thing was moved along. May 11th, 2018, right? November 15th, 2018. Interfaces for syringe injectable electronics. Abstract. The present invention generally relates to injectable electronics. In some respects, the present invention is generally directed to systems and methods for interfacing an electrical cable with electrical elements such as nanoscale wires that are injected or otherwise introduced into a subject. The subject may be living or non-living. In one set of embodiments, the electrical elements introduced within a subject may be placed in an electrical communication to a circuit board using a plurality of electrically isolated contacts that the circuit board can clamp or otherwise connect to. The electrical contacts may be electrical communication with the electrical elements using the joining portion. The circuit board may also be connected to an electrical cable that can be attached, for example, to a computer. In some cases, the electrical cable can be attached or detached to or from the circuit board. So they're looking for an interface to put this thing into people's bodies. And this is Charles Lieber, Thomas George Schumann, Jun Yao, Gu Sung Hong, Tianmin Fu, Youngmin Lee, Hongyu Park, right? These are the lead developers on that. And to me, this is the smoking gun, right? Because ultimately, if you're really playing God here, and you want to see how this thing works on an individual basis. Like aerial dispersal, it's like a shotgun effect. But if you want to get right to it and hit somebody with something like this, you're going to need an injectable interface. Now, does that mean that the syringe itself is an injectable interface? Maybe not. Maybe just a regular syringe is the thing that's going to be the applicator for the technology. No, it is the application for the thing to be moved through the syringe or whatever it is that they decide to use. The creepy part about that abstract was living or dead bodies. Like, what are they trying to do with dead bodies? Are they trying to reanimate them through nanotechnology? Think about that for a moment. Think about that. Think about having a dead body, and then all of a sudden, these machines begin to get switched on and take over the autonomic function of a dead body. This is Charles Lieber's fucking Dr. Frankenstein. He's Dr. Frankenstein. And so when I look at those patents, literally starting from soup to nuts, and his team of developers, which at some point in the 2000s radically shift, probably to reflect his involvement in building the level 4 lab in Wuhan. Now we have to have a very different discussion about COVID-19. Now we have to have a very different discussion about the vaccines themselves and what's inside of those vaccines. And we've all seen the hydras, right? We've all seen the hydras. The hydras look like the blood clots, right? And by the way, there are blood clots. There are blood clots. This is nothing that isn't being talked about. Now, YouTube will probably say, well, you're making an assumption based on whatever and spreading false information. Okay, so hear me out here. Hear me out. This is my theory. It is not a fact. It is my theory. So I'm not stating this as a fact. And if you're willing to listen to my theory, that puts us on a different level, right? That puts us on a level where we're talking about something that for the most part could be speculative, but we're allowed to speculate. We're allowed to speculate. We're allowed to have a theory as long as we don't firmly root it as our fact, in which case, if it's the wrong fact, then it'll have deleterious effects and circumstances on our ability to share information. So I'm sharing a theory with you right now. And my theory is that Charles Lieber and his work at Harvard in conjunction with the Chinese is the smoking gun. He is the missing link in all of this. And that what we're dealing with, the whole thing of, the gain of function stuff, I believe it's a big misdirect. It's a big canard. And in a lot of ways, that's why Fauci can lie. That's why he can say things about the gain of function stuff that do not implicate him. Fauci's a very sharp character. He knows exactly what to say and not what to say. And so he can chime in on the gain of function stuff, and he can say that, and he's probably telling a version of the truth. He may not be telling the truth, but he's probably telling a version of the truth. The real truth is not even being addressed. So this is my, and I found Lieber like within weeks of 3/11/2020. I was talking about Charles Lieber by the time April came around. He was one of the first people that I did a daily podcast on that was in relationship to this, because I had seen he'd been arrested, and I had seen his connections with that level 4 lab in Wuhan. his fingerprints are all over this thing. So what we're really dealing with here, in my estimation, my theoretical estimation, is an intracellular invasion, not by a virus, but by synthetic life forms. And we've been dealing with this for a very long time. Very long time. This is just the most direct delivery of the latest iteration. And this is why ultimately the call for everyone to be vaccinated is going to be brought back up again. And they may not have any logic. They may not have any real justification. But the idea here is ultimately to switch the machines on. And once the machines are switched on, then we're all connected into a network. And then once we're connected into a network, we don't need a cell phone or a computer. We are the cell phone. We are the computer. You know, and again, this gets into Allison's work, and I think her work is great. But she has the personality of somebody who, you know, fingers on a chalkboard. And so you don't want to look there because, you know, it's somebody who just does, you know, does. And this is how it works sometimes. Sometimes you get, you know, messengers of truth who are imperfect. And they are not always the best vehicle for things to come through. My beef with her had to do with the fact that she was invited to an event, which was an online event. She didn't even have to fucking show up. But it was an online event with David Icke and Mark Passio and Bob, whatever his name is, Mark Passio's sidekick. And they were talking about, you know, what are we going through and what are we going to do about it, basically, right? And they invited her and she turned them down because, well, you know, they're like the patriarchy and they're like patriots. And, you know, I don't want to associate myself with such a hateful group of people. It's like, come on, you know, it's such liberal bullshit. Like, you have an opportunity to share your message with a wide group of people. A wide group of people, and you're not going to do that. And then she started to talk about, oh, well, I've learned so much about the activist Indian farmers. And, you know, I've had so many really, really important and powerful teachers from the Black community in Philadelphia, including the people that started, you know, AIM, the African-American movement or whatever it's called, right? No, not that's African-American Indian movement, but those guys that in Philadelphia, who's the housing project that burned down, right? So she's touting, you know, she's like, I'm going to declare, you know, my allegiance with this other group, and I'm gonna grow awareness through these means. Well, good. I think your message is going to be pretty limited. I think the numbers of people in those worlds, honestly, probably don't want to hear what you have to talk about. I could be wrong, but my big issue was she made a big fucking virtue signal of it. That's what my issue was. Oh, look at me. I'm retaining my intellectual and social purity. It's like, yeah, you do good work, right? Like, get your hands dirty. Rub shoulders with people that you don't feel comfortable with. Because honestly, right, this is somebody who has an idea of kind of a social utopia. And in a social utopia, not everybody's going to like the same flavor of oat milk, okay? It's just not going to happen. You're going to be engaged with very, very different and diverse people. And diverse, I mean, not in a classical, you know, educational university definition of diverse. People that are really outside of your zip code, but could be your best fucking ally, and you wouldn't even know it, right? And this is where we're going with the true Aquarian age, this is where we're going, right? We will find allies in areas that we least expect it. It's like, oh, wow, I can't believe this. We're working together now, right? Like I just look at the Kanye and Kyrie thing and look at the, strange kind of affiliation of people that are starting to come to, like, I started to support Kyrie, and I didn't know hashtags on Twitter, but I've been a big supporter of Kanye. I don't care if he's fucking programmed, deprogrammed, fragged, hacked. I don't care, right? Like if he was, and he's got all the telltale signs, he's trying to break free. Either that or it's just another program. And even if that's the case, I don't fucking care, because it's starting discussions, right? So I offered some support for both of those guys. And all of a sudden, I started to get some new people on my Twitter feed. By the way, I have gotten way more ads on Twitter since Elon Musk has been in charge. I don't know why that is. I can't quantify that. But now I've got people on my Twitter feed pretty different. That's good. We need different. We need to be able to operate cohesively in a world where not everybody is going to look the same or have like the same, social trajectory. That's not the world where we're headed. I have a great story, by the way. Just a great story. I had this client yesterday. She was 22 years old, and both their parents are Kenyan, and her father is a Muslim, and her mother's a Roman Catholic, right? And this girl was the sweetest, smartest person. She was just fantastic, just absolutely fantastic. She's studying biomedical engineering. So I asked her, is this nano world? She said, well, it could go into nano world, but I'm still poking. So I've always wanted to be an engineer. My father was an engineer, and I've always wanted to be an engineer. And I was like, this is a great story. And I just love running into young people who are open and hungry for knowledge. And she was really humble and kind. It's just like, look, whatever you do, you're going to be fine. Right. There's that saying about a house. My father used to tell me, oh, it's got good bones. You could look at a house and go, it's got good bones. Meaning that the construction on that house was good. That girl has good bones. Whatever she does, she's going to be fine. I can tell you that right now. But that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Here I am having a conversation with a young woman whose parents, both Kenyan, and mother's Roman Catholic and her father's a Muslim, right? And we're talking about her life and astrology and her life path. In that moment in time, right, I felt an alliance with this person. I felt like I was part of the human family with this person, where we take care of one another, and hoping that whatever I shared with her, can move her along and help propel her dream forward. And it's funny when I click on the camera for Zoom and I'm doing I don't know who's going to be on the other end. Sometimes I do. I'll pop in. I'm like, oh, here we go. Right. Okay. We get to connect now. And I like that. I like the fact that, it's a surprise a lot of times. Right. So if we're going to get through this time, we're going to be working with people that are very disparate and different than who we are at times. It's just baked in the cake. This is what Aquarius is about. So Allison, what's her McDowell? Was that her name? Allison McDowell. Get the message, right? It's not all going to line up, so that your, vegan utopia is in response to the encroachment of the Internet of Bodies and the technocracy. Not sure it's going to carry the day unless you find other wheels, other spokes on your wheel to help you. And that goes for just about anybody. You never know where you'll find your allies in the areas that you least expect them. That's the time we're living in now. All right. I think we're out of here. I think I've used up my 2-hour credit. No, I don't have any credit. But there are some things I want to talk about. Business, take care of business. Hit the like button. Hit the like button, subscribe until we get back over to the other channel. Also, if you kind of like this last part of the show where I just ranted a little bit, check me out on 15 Minutes of Flame. That's 15 FIFTENOVFLAME, 15 Minutes of Flame, right? .com. I stream there from 9/11 to 10:41 a.m. Tuesday through Thursday. And then, of course, we're here on Friday with guests, and Sunday night, we have Sunday Night Astro Live, which is a 2-hour plus dive into astrology. I also have, we're building things up slowly here. We're creating new tools for use. We got new tools for use, okay? So I've been working with Mishi the Doomer Boomer, also known as the Empress of Email. We've been working, actually, she's been doing the heavy lifting, but of course, I get to hit the check boxes, right? On a Discord channel. So I'm going to be putting together, I've got to dive into the email list and really update both for paid members and subscribers. Because I know some paid members are thinking, hey, we're getting there. Okay, we're getting there. I'm a one-man band. So I'm making a very concerted effort over the next 72 hours to update both of those lists. Okay. So that when you get the next newsletter and you're a paid member, you're going to get it. You won't have to remind me. I promise you. Scout's honor. And if you're a paid member, doesn't matter what level you're at, you're going to get access to our private Discord channel. And that's going to be a cool thing. And I'll tell you why. Number one, I'm going to be more involved. Right. So, there is the 11th house on Telegram. I'm somewhat involved. But I'm going to be way more involved in this Discord channel. And we're going to have separate rooms inside, and Mishi's already taken care of them. She's already made the rooms. So it's going to be a cool thing. And one of the things that I really want to do, what I really, really want to do is I want to have a separate area set aside for what's called citizen journalism, meaning that we're not just cutting and pasting bits and pieces of information which amplify the energy, the anger, the angst, whatever, the schadenfreude in the echo chamber. I don't want that. What I would love to have, and you don't have to go, you can, if you're a member, you can just go there and hang out and talk shit if you want. You can post memes if you want. There's things you can do in this place. Not everybody has to be a citizen journalist, but for people that are so inclined, that's what we're going to have a portion of this set aside for, where we'll take one thing, like let's say, for instance, Charles Lieber or FTX, and we'll drill down on that fucker, right? And people will, and there are people who are bloodhounds with research, and we'll put these things together. And then guess what we'll do? As a group, we will publish the paper. we will have a group published paper, right? And where you ask, is that going to be published? Substack. We're going to have a Substack. There won't be any names associated with it, right? No name. It's going to be an Aquarian thing. And what we're going to hope to do, right, is to publish stuff that gets picked up by people who think that this is the shit, that we've uncovered threads. And because the internet is getting harder and harder to, access and archive information, that's another part, hopefully, that we'll be able to do, right? Download documents, save them, put them on our computers, put them in a hard drive, external hard drive. So, this is part of a kind of a long curve, right? But I've been wanting to do this for a while. I want to see people become more empowered. I think we've been in this place now of awakening for a long time. And there's a lot of, really smart and hip and with it people on the 11th House Telegram, and they're always bringing things up and discussing. That's great. We got to get to the next level, right? We got to get to the next level. And the next level is we do something with the things that we find and we put it out there. So that'll be part of the function of the Discord channel. I'm really looking forward to that. It's a private channel. It's our private channel. So if you're a paid member, you get access. No matter what level you're at, you're going to get access to that Discord channel. And in 72 hours, pray for angels of inspiration and dedication and commitment. I'll have this email list under control, and Michi will sort it out and correlate it, and people will be getting everything they need. And then I'll be announcing more stuff as we move into 2023. I'm going to be working on a very comprehensive astrological course that people can take in chunks in 2023. That'll be part of the deal. So we're ramping up, right? We're ramping up on the member side and providing more services. And we've done this recently with the last 2 months. We had a couple of group Zooms for the members. We had a nice group Zoom on election night, although, election night itself was not that buzzy, but it was great to get together and talk about stuff and swap kind of stories about what it was like to go out and vote or be part of that whole experience. Very different stories from very different places, obviously. All right. I think that's it. I'm out of here. 2:02 on the button. You know the drill. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thank you all for being here. Have yourself a great weekend. We're headed into Thanksgiving and Sagittarius season, one of my favorite times of year. It's a time to make merry and be wise. We'll see you guys on Sunday night. Bye for now. Oh, mods, thank you for all you do too. Take care.